Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donoghue here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. This week I met the Glanbia chairman Henry Corbally, and you can read the full interview in our print edition on Thursday. But let's hear what he had to say about volatility in the tillage sector and the work involved in being a well-paid co-op director.
Well, isn't the tillage business a strange business really, in that we've had 3 bumper harvests with 3 very bad prices. The tillage farmer is more than anyone, I'd say, exposed to the world market for his product. It's very hard to understand how some of them even survive, because allegedly the margins are very, very low. We have done as much as anyone to support our tillage farmers. We've brought in support from the co-op. About 40% of our purchases from our suppliers are into premium contracts. Oats, there's a list of them there, and that's higher than anybody else's. We're constantly being compared to people who only buy maybe one product and only buy the base product, the wheat and barley, whereas we have a whole stable of premium products for our suppliers, and there's a lot of extra money in that. But in saying that, it is a very difficult business. People have survived by growing scale, but scale in itself is not an answer if a business isn't making money.
One, I suppose, that has jumped up a bit, pay of directors and board members. Not going to ask you to the turkeys voting for Christmas, but how is it possible to square that with the farmer on 22, 23 cent a litre when he sees farmers, his own peers, on pace vastly higher than what they're on?
Well, the organisation is based on a very democratic structure. It starts at the membership. We have 16,500 members in Glanbia. 8,000 of those are active. 5,000 of those are supplying milk. The value that is involved in the 3 different organisations in Glanbia is a very serious business. When you become a director of a company, you take on a responsibility of ensuring that that company trades in a responsible manner. The most important thing is that everybody is paid at the end of each month or each year, and that responsibility effectively goes back to the directors. The directors in Glanbia last year had over 50 meetings. There is a huge amount of information to be assumed by each director before meetings. They sit on 3 different boards. It's a great honour and a privilege to do so, but it is a great amount of work as well. There are no expenses paid to directors. Their directors' fees are what they get. They obviously need to take a lot of time off from their farms. They need to replace that work. It isn't a lifetime job. It's a job that you do for your term while you're elected. And I believe that people have great regard and respect for the directors. They give them plenty of criticism. They expect them to be of a standard that they understand, know, and effectively oversee the running of the business to their satisfaction. That's a great responsibility for a small number of people to carry for a very large shareholding.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
In the UK, polls are showing growing support for a vote to leave the EU in this month's referendum. Our news correspondent Odile Evans continues to gauge the mood in England in this week's Irish Farmers Journal. She spoke with 2 British farmers, Andrew Baxter and Alistair McIntosh.
Have you decided whether or not you want to stay in or out?
At the moment I'm still undecided as to which way I ought to vote. I keep listening to different sides of the argument and hearing different people, and one seems very persuasive, and then you hear somebody from the other side and you think, well, they've got a logical reason as to why we ought to be either remaining or leaving. I'd probably err on the side of remaining in, because I just think that we won't get any support from anybody, and yet it would be lovely to be able to farm without all the hassle that we get. But we've got to bear in mind that most of the hassle's been created by the British government rather than the EU, because they've gold-plated all the EU legislation, and that I think will still happen. The green lobby in this country is huge, and we will still have to maintain all the various things, environmental measures, if we want to access any sort of money. So I don't think it's quite as simple as the Brexit people perhaps think it will be. And I think to ask the country as a whole such an important question is potential suicide for the country.
Does it worry you that British politicians may not be as concerned about agriculture as they are about other sectors when it comes to negotiating a deal with the EU if you choose to leave?
Depends who you talk to, doesn't it, within British agriculture. Some politicians reckon that they go and fight our corner for us in Brussels, and others say that they don't do anything and they're not really interested, and it's a job to get anyone there to discuss the agricultural regulations and rules when they come along. And the other slightly worrying thing is that the CAP, while it's not liked, it is one thing that's given us all a lifeline over these last 25, 30 years that we've been in. And the last round of negotiations, the British government had the view that they wanted to see subsidies reduced and wiped out by 2020, and it was only the French that actually meant that we got what we've got, with an awful lot of greening measures, unfortunately. Yeah, we've got to remember that the British government would like to see all subsidies lifted. And while I think there's nothing wrong with that, there's only one country in the developed world that farms without any subsidy, and that's New Zealand. Everywhere else in the world, it's all subsidised in one form or
Australia?
another. No, not at the moment. They're looking at it, aren't they? But at the moment, they're subsidised. So, yeah, it's a really tricky decision, and I'm not sure that really ought to be asking the nation what we ought to be doing. And it was just purely a political wheeze, wasn't it, to try and win a few votes, which I think is probably the biggest mistake Cameron's made of his political career, because I suspect he'll end up out on his ear in another month's time.
You said you've kind of given the reasons why you think we might stay in, but you said you're undecided. What would be your reasons for leaving?
What have we got to lose, really? Except I do think we've possibly got quite a lot to lose, so that's why I am cautious about it. Yeah, there's 45% of me that thinks that, why don't we give it a go and see what happens? But there's really no way back, as I understand it.
Yeah.
So if it's the wrong thing, then, yeah, we've made a very major error, but, yeah.
Any other issues for you in it, then?
Well, I mean, I think, we just talked about agriculture, but I think it's far more important than what happens whether we get subsidised or not. I think there is an attitude within certain generations, I reckon, in this country still, who think that we ought to paddle our own little canoe, and that we've always managed it and we've always been a world leader and so on. And I just don't think that actually cuts the mustard anymore in this big international world where every company is multinational, really. And I think probably to be involved with 500 million other people where there's an open market, you can move your goods around and so on without any tariffs and so on. It does seem rather silly to be leaving that. So yeah, that's the bottom line, I think.
So you're a farmer from West Cumbria, is that right? Or what kind of farming are you doing?
Beef and sheep, and I've got some arable.
You've decided that you're going to vote to stay in. What's your logic behind that?
Well, for me, Europe provides us with a huge affluent market that we're already part of. Mm-hmm. There's a free trade agreement within that Europe. We have free passage of goods. And quite frankly, for me, if we come out, why would we want to leave that environment? Because when you have an affluent consumer, we want to be able to supply.
Do you think there are structural issues within the Union?
No organisation is ever perfect. There are some prime examples of countries who work within Europe, are good Europeans, and they actually are able to benefit their consumers and their farmers and their industry better, or they seem to be able to get more out of Europe than we do. We seem to have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I genuinely believe we could be better Europeans. Having said that, I think there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of things that happen within Europe that could be done better. They could streamline a lot of the decision making. The bureaucracy seems to be overwhelming at times. I think the fundamental issue for me as a business person and a farmer is that there's a free market there, there's a huge market there, and we have no tariff or trade barriers to work within that market.
And just on that market, I was looking at the Farmer's Guardian, and it was saying that if you leave the EU, you might have more freedom to decide on GM and different sprays and things like that. But ultimately, if you still want to sell to the other countries in Europe, you're still going to have to meet the same production standards, aren't you?
Well, yeah, production standards will be the same. But we also have to consider the fact that in this country, we have a consumer that is certainly well educated and well informed, and they want to have an influence on whether we involve GM, what sort of sprays we use. So we need that collective responsibility. We need to maintain a proper farming industry.
Does it worry you that countries on the outer edges of Europe, more and more of them seem to be joining Europe?
If you're going to enhance the market and the rules are going to be the same for everybody and there's going to be a level playing field, that doesn't worry me at all. Mm-hmm. The bigger the market, the better as far as I'm concerned. It's about a level playing field for me. And Europe as a level playing field, I think, would be immense value to all of us. The problem is there's a lot of work to do yet to ensure that that playing field gets levelled out. As for joining, I can understand countries outside Europe looking at the European market, looking at the European consumer and saying, we want a share of that. Yeah. And, you know, they talk about the money, they talk about what they'll save. But actually, the money that comes into farming I saw a TV programme the other day there, and they were talking about the money that comes back in the rebate. Actually, it worked out that every taxpayer pays £4 a week to the British farmers. Mm-hmm. That's less than 60 pence a day. Yeah. Now for that, they get affordable food. Mm-hmm. They get access to British affordable food. They get high animal welfare standards. They get traceability. Yeah. And they get the environment that everybody sees. They get the countryside that is managed in. So for 60 pence a day, I think that is fantastic value for money. Yeah. And the real challenge for us is, would our government be prepared to step up and put similar amounts of money, taxpayers' money, into agriculture for the same thing? And our government especially doesn't have a good track record of engaging with other industries to save them, so why would they save ours? They haven't saved the coal or the steel. Well,
it's something that I have kind of gathered, that British farmers don't have the same access to their MPs as the Irish farmers have.
I think if you look at the Irish situation, you have a government with a food strategy. You know, you've 3 or 4 million people, and yet you've 8 or 9 million cows. You know, so you are going to have to have an export strategy. You are going to have a strategy for agriculture. We don't. Yeah. We almost lost DEFRA as a department in the last government shake-up.
So my last question then is on the young farmers, and one of the arguments I've heard is that by leaving the union, it might actually make entry to farming more accessible for young farmers. What would you say to that?
Both my sons are university graduates, and I've spoken to them at length. One's still at university, and they're adamant that staying in and being good Europeans has more prospects, because you've got a huge market.
And also they can travel easier.
Absolutely.
Which is what young people want to do, I suppose, isn't it?
And to be honest, I want to see young people choose to be in agriculture. I want to see young people have choices as to what they want to do with their lives.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
In Northern Ireland, organic farmers are getting organised. Our correspondent Peter McCann met David Loughlin, one of the producers who formed the new industry group, Organic NI.
Well, the Organic NI is now the officially recognised stakeholder group for the organic sector in Northern Ireland, and we are filling a vacuum that had been left by the Organic Action Plan Group for Northern Ireland, which folded, I think, about 2009, 2010. So we had no official representation for about 5 or 6 years, and with the new round of rural development funding, we felt that we should have been in a position to get some funding, both for organic conversion and under a stewardship scheme, as all other European member countries do. So we took our plight to Brussels, and they said that we should be funded to the same level that other European countries are. So we looked at both the UK funding structure and the Republic's funding structure, and we have been pitched somewhere in between the two of them. So, you know, as our two nearest neighbours, that gives us a more level playing field to work on as far as the organic sector goes.
As far as organic farming goes in Northern Ireland, is there many producers, and is there an interest at the other end of the market for consumers?
Yes to both of those, Peter. There's certainly an interest in the primary production sector and an increasing interest in the consumer end. We do some home sales just from Culmore Organic Farm, and that's growing quite steadily at the minute. And with the bigger picture then, both Emerald Organics and United Irish Organics, the two main milk buyers and sellers in Northern Ireland, are finding that the marketplace is steady, if not increasing slightly. So the confidence is there, and now that we're slowly coming out of recession, that will help the organic sector, because it is perceived as a high-end market, although that's not necessarily the truth or the case, but there seems to be an increasing market for us. We're about 1% of the total production in Northern Ireland across the beef, sheep and milk sectors, and if we can start to add a wee bit of value to it and process a wee bit more of our own food, certainly there is room for import substitution still. quite significant room actually.
As far as the beef and sheep goes, who's the main purchasers and processors of that?
Unfortunately, at the minute, it used to be ABP and Glanbia. Unfortunately, Glanbia have given up their organic licensing, and they're not slaughtering at all now. So ABP have the ball at their own toe, and I can't speak really on behalf of the beef and lamb sector, but it would appear that ABP are being reasonably fair at the minute. But they're finding that they have a limited market. They supply the main multiple retailers, and they're finding that at certain times of the year, anyway, in Northern Ireland, there's an oversupply of beef and lamb, organic beef and lamb, and that does depress the price a wee bit at certain times of the year. But at other times of the year, then the market's reasonably strong.
I suppose with organic NI, are you looking for existing farmers to come in? And I suppose you talked about conversions too. Is that something that you're aiming for too, to get more men to come in?
Yeah, well, the idea is to open up the possibility of new entrants to the scheme. Now, obviously, we wouldn't want a flood of people coming in, because that would oversupply the market, and that would be the worst thing for any of us. But there is room, as the marketplace grows, for production to grow as well, and we need to stage it carefully, that we don't fall into this trap again of having more product than we can sell, because that's a recipe for disaster, basically, and that would depress the prices on the existing producers.
Yeah. As far as conversion goes, what is the time period then before it's officially recognised?
The recognised time period for conversion is 2.5 years, and during that time the farmer has to farm organically and doesn't benefit from the value added of the organic product. So that's what the organic conversion scheme will help to offset.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Now, if you didn't get a chance to visit Bloom this year, we're going to take you there. And before we visit the show gardens, let's stay with the farmers and hear from Paul Finnegan, a potato grower and one of the many food exhibitors at the show. He is interviewed by Amy Fitzgibbon.
So this is the 10th Bloom Festival. How many times have you been here?
This is the first year.
Oh, your first year? Okay,
yeah,
right,
it's the
okay.
first year here, because I suppose we have a couple of new products to the market, and we just thought probably Bloom's was one of the best places to launch it. So
it really is.
Yeah,
it's
so
an
we're looking
important
forward
date in the calendar.
Yeah, very good, yeah.
And Paul, can you tell me a little bit about the business here?
Well, the business, I suppose, we're potato growers. That's our main core business. This is kind of an add-on to what we do. We have probably some potatoes just don't make the cut or don't make the grade at supermarket level. So we've really launched a few products here that we could actually use these potatoes in.
Okay.
The likes of the wedges, the chips, baked potatoes can all be used rather than, because the other potatoes have thrown away. They have a lower cost.
And do you find there's more pressure on you from retailers at the moment in regards to grades and things like that?
Yeah, the grades are tight. I mean, they do expect everything, but I mean, that's our business, and we number one is quality. It's all about quality to us. So it's about growing the quality, and then anything that's left over, we still use it up. So.
Okay, and where is the farm based?
We're based outside Ashburn, which is on the Dublin Derry Road, off the N2. Okay. So everything is based there. We have our own pack house, our own processing facility. Everything is based on farm. Excellent. And the potatoes are growing in the immediate area.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Amy also met Barry Kavanagh, a County Cavan-based farmer who designed a garden on social farming for Bloom. The garden is called Across Boundaries and won a gold medal. Barry explains the idea behind it.
It's all about social farming, where people that are in current therapy, conventional-based therapy, have an option then to come out to work on farms, basically, and they come out for a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, and basically it's more of a sort of a relaxed type therapy in a way, and when they come out to ordinary working family farms, they get to experience what the farmers themselves experience on the land, working with the animals and nature and going across the field, or all the small things really that we all might take for granted, but people in sort of certain forms of therapy get a lot from, even like bees flying past them, or it's just stroking a cow maybe, or.
And are you involved in social farming yourself?
I am, yeah. I have a small farm in County Cavan, in Begliff, near Bailieborough, County Cavan. Up in just a small farm, a few drumlins, we all know them up in Cavan, and basically a beautiful place, a wonderful part of the country.
And do you find that it's very beneficial for the people you have on your farm?
Absolutely. The guys that came out to me now all benefited from being there. We benefited as well. It's like it's a two-way sort of agreement situation between us. Like, you know what I mean, that we sort of I benefit from them coming out. Not only in they work there with me, you know, because some of them can only do so much. I mean, others can do a bit more. Just the interaction.
And what usually are the backgrounds of the people who come to you? Do they have mental health difficulties or physical health difficulties?
Primarily mental health, some physical, or a combination of both.
And on average, how long would they stay on the farm?
Some would say a week per week, and others up to 3 days per week, depending on which farm. At the moment, there's about 20 social farms in operation to certain degrees. Some with just one person coming out 1 day a week, others probably have 3 coming out days a week, and so on. So
20 farms in Ireland, 20 social farms in Ireland.
Well, from the SOFAB, social farming cross boundaries, a couple of years ago there was a pilot scheme for 20 farms, 10 north of the border, 10 south of the border, and that was a great success. And then since then like some farms are still in operation, social farms, some are not because of certain reasons or whatever, but everyone wants to be. Just hoping that the government would, you know what I mean, take it aboard how important something initiative like this is, you know.
And is this garden, is this sponsored by the IFA and the CEDRA from the Department of Agriculture?
Yeah, CEDRA is one of the sponsors, the IFA is another sponsor, Dairy Council of Ireland, amongst others. And they're all basically farm-based sponsors that are sponsoring us, yeah. So.
And tell me a little bit about the design of the garden. What kind of made you design it the way you did? It's a beautiful, there's a pond in the middle and there's a shed and then sort of
it's actually a ram. That's a ram.
Oh, it's a ram.
And there's sheep in the meadow there. Like, trying to keep it as natural and as true to farming as possible, as an old traditional style farm. And so the old hay meadow there is actually came from my own farm, top of the land there.
And the gate as well.
The gate was actually made from a fantastic forge in Muff in Bailieborough near Kingscourt there, and rock forge Andrew Clark, he's brilliant, you know. And he made those, the kissing gate and the gate there into the field.
And you have quite a big space, you know, that you've used, like, you know.
Yeah, it's one of the biggest farms, the biggest gardens really, because you need a bit of space to really truly represent the farm, you know, that way. So we just thought to show the different elements of the woodland over there, the meadow. And the upland, this where the ram is there, is meant to be sort of upland Cavan, Drumlin. Then it's a lake, that's a lake. Then the west of Ireland where the chair is over there. That's you know the herringbone wall that you see in the west of Ireland.
Oh yes, like in Connemara.
You
see those with stone walls which are really built with nothing except just they're built one on top of the other. There's no cement or anything. It's a dry stone wall.
So this is what these are meant to represent, really, dry stone walls. You see.
So you're kind of representing all of Ireland, really.
I'm trying to get everyone together, the whole farm and rural community, into one space so we can, you know.
And is that a milk churn as well you have?
It is, and that's a haystack milk churn. It's one of the rarer ones. That came from Victor Mee in County Cavan, auctioneer.
Okay, excellent.
He has a lot of these antiques. So it's like all rural communities, they all chipped in really to help the garden as much as possible.
Now for a bit of commemoration. Let's turn to the garden dedicated to the children of 1916. Amy met its designer, Fian O'Nualan.
There was a competition run in the Irish independence to find somebody who had a personal connection to 1916 or who could reimagine some of the stories of 1916. And we got hundreds and hundreds of entries and really diverse stories, you know. Guys who, you know, one brother was shot on the front on the Somme the same day as his brother was captured by the British in, you know, Richmond Barracks or whatever. And then you had stories about, you know, there was one woman whose wedding reception was delayed by the rebels and she wrote to the Lord Lieutenant to complain. You know? And then you had the woman writing, you know, about how her mother made the sandwiches for the boys and didn't know whether they were going to come home. So sad stories, poignant stories, human interest stories, some funny stories, you know, guys travelling up from Cork and getting here and it was all over, you know, and getting on the train and going back, that sort of stuff, you know. So the story that won was one about the children in 1916, but it wasn't so much about the martyrdom of the children in 1916. It was about the excitement of waking up Easter Monday, and the streets that you used to play hopscotch in now have barricades across them, now have military checkpoints, that the buildings are on fire, and it's like, what's going on? Our world is turned upside down. And then you hear Ryan Sweetshop is on fire, and they're shoveling the sweets into the streets because the sweets are flammable and they don't want the fire to spread.
All right, I thought they wanted to save the sweets.
And then that the kids then, who would never in a million years
be able to afford
the sweet, are rushing, and they're braving the bullets and the barricades and the fires to get there.
And it's a true story.
And it's a true story. And what happens is that we often talk about that time in terms of, you hear that the Dubliners looted. The Dublin Metropolitan Police reports were just released in the last couple of weeks, and they've shown that the majority of the arrests on the run-up to Easter week and after Easter week were young girls between the ages of 11 and 24 who were arrested for stealing firewood. Firewood to keep warm.
Right.
And we forget that under British colonial rule, we had the highest rates of infant mortalities. We had severe poverty. We had disenfranchisement. I mean, this was the proclamation on the wall was about universal suffrage. It was about giving women the vote, but it was also about giving men the vote who were ordinary working class guys that didn't own property, so that we could all have a share in politics. And it says cherish all the children equally. So the guys who were setting up the barricades were fighting for the children who were looking to get a sweet, who would never in a million years be able to afford. So this garden retells that story, and how it retells that story is we actually got the cobble from the streets that's seen the action.
Oh wow!
So we got the cobbles from North King Street and around Richmond Barracks, and they're here now. They're in the garden.
Okay.
And so there's the echo of the children are there anyway, because they would have been the streets they ran across.
Yeah, of course.
We tried to source as close to period materials to create the barricades as if they were just literally pulled out of the tenement houses, and we got the old Jemson's barrels, and we got an old card we brought all the way up from Galway. So it definitely wasn't there on the day, but it was all our revolution. It wasn't just Dublin,
Yeah, of course.
And then we have a Lee Enfield, and we have Mausers, and we have original bullet casings from the period of time strewn in the garden.
Yeah.
And then what we tried to do was we have Irish sweets in the garden.
Okay.
We tried to get as close to like the gobstoppers and the bullseyes and the lemon sherbets. These are the things that would have been strewn in the streets. And then their colours are picked up in the planting. So that you have the lemon sherbet in the Achillea, and you have the kind of the sour drops in the geums, and within that space then as well we have these grasses with their effervescent flowers, which are not just fizzy, but they remind me of kind of the ricochets. So that the whole experience when you're looking at it is that fizzy excitement. It's almost a sugar rush, and that bespeaks of the anticipation of the kids that they're going to get their hands on some sweets. But it also, because it's a riot of colour, it expresses what was going on, the noise and the big hoopla and everything that was happening.
And
cavalry
of course, the garden
charged up the street.
is also a remembrance as well.
And this is it, and it's important to be kind of respectful. So it's kind of true to the mood of the day, and that's the best way to be respectful. It's a piece of theatre, but it's not there to be showy or dramatic for any unnecessary reason. It's there to be a chunk of living history.
And for more history and farming later this week, don't miss our online coverage of the Farming and Country Life 1916 event organised by Teagasc in Athenry on Friday and Saturday.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
But back to Bloom, and a bit of glamour to finish. Irish Country Living editor Mairead Lavery asked 3 Irish celebrities, Nuala Carey, Marty Morrissey and Evelyn Cusack, about their favourite flowers.
I'm here with Nuala Carey, another of our weather women. What's your favourite plant, Nuala? Are you a keen gardener, first of all?
Do you know what? I appreciate a lovely garden, but I'm not a great gardener.
Are you a weeder?
I probably would be more of a weeder. My mum is a very good gardener, and because she's so good at it, I kind of feel there's no point in me kind of trying to replicate it. So she's the one with the green fingers. I've no green fingers. But I love beautiful flowers. I love roses. I suppose a rose would be my favourite flower.
Your favourite. There's beautiful roses down on the David Austin stand. There's Gertrude Jekyll. They sold out completely today.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
The aroma, the scent of the rose is just magnificent. What would grab you? Is it the scent you're looking for, or is it the kind of the look?
I think it's the look and the fact that a rose, you can have a rose in lots of different colours. I like that. And I know a girl, on the day she got married, she did a thing about blue roses, and somebody gave her blue roses.
That's right,
And Jackie O also would have talked about how yellow roses, she loved yellow roses, whereas a lot of people would like the pink or the red. So I like the fact that they're so different. You don't have to have just a red rose. You can have lots of different colours.
You can have rambling roses and plant roses, and you can have shrub roses.
Wild roses.
You can have them for every different aspect.
But every rose is a thorn, you know that.
All right. So thank you, Nuala, very much.
Thank you.
I'm here with Marty Morrissey at Bloom, and he's scoffing a big bowl of chips here at the minute. Are you a keen gardener, Marty?
Well, I love gardening. I think, and the best way would be to describe it, I think I'd make a very good judge because I could see things and appreciate it. To do the hard work mightn't be my forte.
It wouldn't be.
No.
Any particular favourite plants?
I think roses still. And
Really?
Yeah, I think roses.
Have you been down to the David Austin stand?
Do you know, I swear to God, Maureen, I haven't had a chance to do anything because I've been so busy.
You've been right.
I've been kind of confined to
Well,
barracks.
listen, if you like roses, they have a Gertrude Jekyll rose down there.
Really?
They're sold out. They're hoping to get
Really?
a few back in tomorrow morning. Well, imagine they're sold out on the first day.
On the first day?
Well, the scent of the rose.
That's what I love.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love look, I mean, when you have a day like today and the sun is shining, we've got a great country.
Fantastic.
It's
you wouldn't
green.
want to go anywhere.
You wouldn't want to go anywhere. Why would you want to go anywhere when you have this? You have the green, you have the colours, whatever colour spectrum you want, it's here. And it's just magnificent. And the kind of imagination and design of various gardens is just mind-boggling. It's just awesome.
Have you been around? Any particular favourites?
Well, I was down in the Japanese garden for a while, and
now, mind you couldn't see that in your back garden.
No, you couldn't. No, that would be a bit much even for me now.
Yeah.
But, there was another one I was.
Did you see the Tarzan garden?
No, I didn't get to that either.
Go have a look at that. That's super hot. It's fabulous. And of course, the Irish Country Magazine garden, our own garden, has got a gold medal.
Yeah, I heard that already.
Yeah.
When I get finished later on, I'm going to do a tour because
right.
I just haven't had a chance because. We've 3 programmes, so it's non-stop rehearsals, to be honest with you, All
right. Well, listen, thanks very much for having the word with me. Much appreciated.
I'm delighted to meet you.
I'm here with Evelyn Cusack. Everybody knows her. She's always on our television screens, known throughout the country.
Since 1988, Mairead.
Is that
so,
long?
Yeah, I do sink in eventually into people's minds.
All right, listen, are you a keen gardener?
No.
No.
I'm too busy with all the housework. So when I make it out into the garden on my way out in the morning, I do pick a few weeds.
All right. What's your favourite flower?
Oh, I love irises, and I have a beautiful magnolia tree which I planted. Well, I got someone to plant it for me.
How
about
big
20
is it
years
now?
Ago. It's very big now. It's absolutely stunning. So, as you know, the Met Office, or Met Éireann rather, is down the road from the Botanic Garden.
Yes.
So I love to visit during March and April when the magnolias are out.
Yeah,
in
fantastic.
particular. Yeah, it's really nice. Yeah.
That's all I want to know. Your favourite plant? Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you,
Okay,
Mairead.
enjoy
Lovely to
the
meet
sunshine.
you. Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous. But I made that sun.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.